Hello students, welcome to this first lecture of database management systems, and today we will be studying about traditional file based approach systems for storing the data. So students, as you can see in this diagram that there are three major components which lie here. The first component is the application program component. The second is file system, and third component is all the data files or all the DAT files. Now in order to study this, in order to understand this particular approach, we can see that on the top level, the loan processing application program, the fixed deposit processing application program, and the transaction processing application program are sitting, which are interacting with the file system, and in turn the file system interacts with all the flat files which are kept on our storage device. Now as by the name we can see that the flat file, which is of the name customer underscore details, contains the details of the customer. The customer details flat file will contain all the details of the customer. For example, customer name, customer contact number, customer address, customer account number, and so on and so forth. The customer underscore loan.dat file will contain the detail of the loan which is being taken by the customer. Customer fixed deposit will contain the details of the fixed deposit accounts which have been opened by the customers. And customer transaction file will contain the details of the transactions which has been performed by the customer. So all in all, this is a basic banking system in which I have taken some basic functions which are being performed by the customers. So this is a particular part of this whole banking system. Similarly, if we want to talk about the loan processing application program, so what it will do, the loan processing application program will update, select or retrieve the information regarding the customer loans. The fixed deposit application program, the fixed deposit processing application program will be concerned with the customer fixed deposits, right? It will be concerned with the details of the customer fixed deposits. Transaction processing program will be concerned with the customer transactions. So these are the various aspects. Now what on the broad level is going on is that we have two types of file here on the basis of this particular scenario. The first type of file is the master file. Now the master file is such a file which will contain all those details with respect to customer which are not changed with respect to time. So the master file will contain the details of the customer which will not change with respect to the time. Like for example, if customer underscore details, if we talk about customer underscore details dot dat file, it will contain those details of the customer which will not change with respect to time. Example, customer name will not change with respect to time or not change frequently. So master file will contain those details in which the details are not being changed frequently. Similarly, if we talk about customer loan.dat file, it comes under the category of the transaction file. So now, please don't be confused that this transaction file refers to the customer underscore transaction.dat file. No, it does not has the relation with customer underscore transaction file directly. Transaction files are those files in which that information or data is being kept, which changes frequently with respect to time. So if we talk about customer underscore loan.dat file, the loan details or the loan EMIs changes with respect to time. Frequently it changes, right? Might be possible customer underscore loan account has some balance in a particular month. So every month that balance decreases, debits. Therefore, every month this particular file goes under a change by 1 unit. That is why customer underscore loan.dat file comes under the transaction file. So it is a type of file in which the details changes frequently. Similarly, if we talk about customer underscore fixed deposit file, the details changes quickly. So suppose it might be possible in a particular month, a customer has opened 4 fixed deposit accounts. In a particular month, he or she has opened only 1 fixed deposit account, and so on and so forth. Similarly, if we talk about customer transaction, it is the most frequent file which changes. A customer can transact, can withdraw, or can withdraw cash or withdraw money, or can deposit some amount in his or her particular account. So that constitutes to the customer transaction, which has the capacity to change almost each and every day. Each and every day a customer could transact some money, could debit some money, could credit some money in the account. So it comes under the category of, indirectly in the category of transaction file. Right? So now we will discuss what are the problems with the traditional file system. Traditional file system, there are total 6 problems in traditional file systems. Now the first problem is data security, second is data redundancy, then you have data isolation, then have program data dependence, lack of flexibility and concurrent access anomalies. So one by one we will see each of these problems. So first we will move on to data security. Now the data security problem states that the data is maintained in the flat file. Therefore it is easily accessible and therefore not secure. So because the data is maintained in the flat file, it is very easily accessible for the outside world. It is just on the storage and therefore it is not secure. Now if we consider a scenario for this particular banking system, suppose a customer wants to know his or her account balance, right? So where does the account balance has been stored, in which file? It has been stored in the transaction file, customer_transaction.dat. So in order to show or in order to disclose the transactions or the current balance which that particular customer is wanting to see, we have to provide the access of customer_transaction.dat file to that particular customer. So what is the problem in this approach is that that particular customer can see the total available balance of all the customers. That is the major problem, learners. So customer wants information about his account balance, but what we are offering him, what we are giving him, that whole particular customer_transaction.dat file, and we are giving all the details of the available balances in each and every customer account. So that is why it will enforce, it will not allow to enforce security constraints for that entire file. So this is the first problem. Second problem, most important problem, is the data redundancy problem. So you can see that often the same information is duplicated in 2 or more files. Now again going back onto this diagram, you can see that customer details file will contain customer name, it will contain customer account number, it will contain customer address, it will contain customer contact number, it will contain customer Aadhaar number. Similarly, customer loan file will contain customer name, customer contact number, address, email ID, Aadhaar contact, Aadhaar details, etc. Customer fixed deposit will contain the same details as well as, and customer transaction will contain the same details. So at least customer name and customer account number, might be possible customer email ID will also be repeated in each and every data file. So you can see that there is a redundancy, there is some type of redundancy because the information is duplicated among more than one file. So the duplication of data is also called redundancy, and it leads to higher storage cost because what you are trying to do is you are trying to fill the same detail in each and every file. The information is repeatedly stored in each and every file, therefore higher storage cost and access cost is being applied. And it also leads to one more problem, that is data inconsistency. So suppose, assume that we have repeated email ID in all the 4 data files which have been shown here. So what happens is if I change email ID in customer_details.dat file, I have to change it in customer loan, I have to change it in customer fixed deposit, and I have to change this detail in customer_transaction.dat file. So if in between, while I am changing this particular detail, suppose I forgot to change in customer_fixed deposit, customer_fixed_deposit.dat file. So it will be a chaotic situation because the details which has to be changed in all the 4 files is now only changed in 3 files, and by mistake or I forgot to change in the customer_fixed_deposit.dat file. So this is the case of only 4 DAT files. Suppose there are 40 DAT files, 40.dat files, 40 data files in which a particular detail has to be changed. So you can imagine that it will lead to the inconsistent state of the database system. Therefore, database inconsistency will happen. Right? So this is the problem of data redundancy, which leads to data inconsistency. Next problem is data isolation. Data isolation means that all the related data is not available in one file. That is, it is isolated, it is scattered in different files, and that file may have different formats. Now, if a particular file is having different format and writing, the major problem is that you have to write different application programs for retrieving the appropriate data, which is quite difficult. Because for 4 files it is easy, you can see that for 4 files, but what about 40 files, what about 50 files? The amount of data as increase, it will increase exponentially. So in order to bring out various different formats, in order to bring out data from various different formats of file, you have to write application programs which which are compatible with that particular format, or at least you have to change your program in some way. So that is why the problem of data isolation occurs. One of the major problem is the program data dependency as leads to the major problem. So you can see that under the traditional file approach, application programs are dependent on the master and transaction files, which I have explained earlier, that those application programs are solely dependent upon the master and transaction files. So if suppose physical format of that particular master file or transaction file changes, the change must be made in application programs also in order to access that particular master file. Right? So if the physical format of master file, for example, the field delimiter, record delimiter, because you are changing the physical format, right? So it necessitates that the application program on which it depends, it must be altered also. So that is why you have a certain type of dependency between your program and the data which we have stored in the .dat file. The next problem in this particular approach is the lack of flexibility. Now, lack of flexibility, why it happens is because if you want to retrieve some information, you have written some predetermined requests for the data which you want to retrieve. So you have set up this system and you have set up all the data files, all the DAT files, and what you have done is, in order to retrieve the information from that particular DAT files, what you have done is you have written some predetermined requests in the application program. Now the problem is that if suppose the management or the manager of that particular banking system wants to retrieve some certain thing, wants to retrieve some new information. So what as a programmer you have to do is you have to perform the extensive programming, right? Suppose a bank manager wants to retrieve the details of those particular customers who are living in that particular locality, and that particular query or that particular predetermined request is not written in your data in your application program. So you have to hire a person in order to perform this extensive programming. Also, this may also happen that by the time that particular person or that programmer writes this particular program, this determined request, that information may no longer be useful, may no longer be required by that particular manager. So that is why it is not flexible in the mode that if a detail is being required, if certain amount of information is being required, you cannot give that particular amount of information on that particular note, on that particular day, or on that particular hour, on that particular need of the hour. So that is the problem of lack of flexibility. Last but not the least, the problem of concurrent access anomalies. This is a very important problem, and because of this problem you can see how dynamic the technology is being, how dynamic the systems are being made. So many traditional systems allows the multiple users to access or update same piece of data simultaneously. Now you have seen this quite frequently, that it might be possible that from a same account a person might be withdrawing some amount of money from an ATM, or maybe performing some transaction through a UPI app, and at the same moment of time a person can be depositing the money on that particular account, in that particular account, by going to the bank or by going through any ATM. So now what the problem rises is, because those two updates are going concurrently side by side, it may result to inconsistent data. So the data can be inconsistent for a certain period of time, because what I am reading is, if I am reading my account statement as I have 1 lakh rupees in that particular account, but on the same moment of time my mother or my wife is withdrawing a certain amount of money, either from the ATM or performing some transaction on the UPI app, I might see that my particular transaction, that my particular balance is same. So the problem is that while concurrent updates, it is very difficult in order to see whether a transaction has been performed or not, right? And at the same time, wrong information, misleading information has been read by the authority. right? So one more example, the bank manager is analyzing all the transactions made by the customer. At the same time, customer accesses his account to make a withdrawal. So account is both read by the bank manager and updated by the customer at the same time. So this is called concurrent access. You are accessing that particular account for the information concurrently. The manager is accessing and the customer is accessing. So because the customer's account is being updated, at the same time there is a possibility that bank manager is reading an incorrect balance, right? So these are the 6 problems which we discussed, which we study in this particular lecture, in this particular tutorial. Thank you, students. Thank you very much.